Number one, what is the craziest story that you have from pastoring in VR?
Craziest story. Oh man, let's take a crazy one and a beautiful one. Meaning, so trolls are great. You don't see these at physical churches. Like rarely would you see the type of trolls that we would experience in the metaverse, and we're just used to them. We don't even think about it since we were birthed in the metaverse. So guys coming up to me in the middle of a sermon, giving me the middle finger, telling me that, whatever, I'm of the devil. Big disruptions. Like one time in One World, again, this is the metaverse, Ready Player One. I was preaching a sermon, looked into the distance, and I saw B-52 bombers flying towards the stage, and I go, oh no, are you kidding me? And sure enough, bombs just started dropping off this B-52 bomber, right? And so crazy stuff like that, an alien attack happened. I mean, it's funny when you ask the question, I forget about all these things because they're normal to me. Like it would be normal for me that to happen this Sunday. I wouldn't make such a big deal out of that. But if like someone who is new to the metaverse came in, and it was like, what's happening here? So crazy stuff like that happens. I think there's some beautiful stories on as far as like one guy, his name, I think it's been a while since I've talked with him. We'll call him John. And, me and John would run around the metaverse, race cars, do whatever. Came to find out he was confined to a wheelchair. And I didn't know John to be confined to a wheelchair all the time. I knew him. And it was just a revelation later. And I was like, man, that's so amazing how, in the physical world, his body is imprisoned. It's stuck. It's in this spot. But in the metaverse, his mind is free. And so I think that's a crazy and the positive side of story.
Yeah. You might, well, this is not the same question, but what is the nastiest thing a pastor or church leader has said to you about what you're doing in VR? What's some of the nastiest things you've heard?
Man, yeah, nastiest. They I don't know if there's like one, because they tend to be in themes, like right?
Yeah, I've heard that one.
yeah, I've heard, totally. Kind of the knee-jerk reaction is, well, that's not real, that's fake. Your church isn't real, which is worse than like you're unbiblical in this area, or you're heresy in this area. Like when you just call something, you invalidate someone's experience,
just wholesale.
And it's really less me, like, because I can take the shots, but it's like for people like that are homebound. Like I think of, a girl right now, she's in a wheelchair in Tacoma, and, she, or just confined to her house. And so, yeah, your spiritual experience isn't real. It's fake. God isn't there. You know what I mean? That's like, it's, I don't know, man. It's just missing what God really is doing in that person's life. And that person's life has had massive transformation. And when I look at that person's transformation, I don't go, oh, that's fake transformation. That wasn't the real Spirit of God moving in your life because of your metaverse faith journey. I wouldn't dare say that. So, but yeah, they come in themes. It's fake. People are fake. It's of the devil. Meta means death in the Bible. So I don't know. They're just constant. So at one point, I don't think it's this frequent anymore, but at one point it was like a YouTube video a week, like anti-VR church.
Wow.
People would send me. I was like,
would you encourage churches to have, if they have a physical location, to have, obviously we want them to have some type of online presence. I think if you're don't have an online presence by now, you're way behind. But do you suggest every physical church have a VR experience? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's think about it in maybe a broader term, because it can be intimidating. So the answer is yes. And I think when we think about like churches getting into it with that intimidation, think of like, let's say you and I were going to get together. We're going to plan a church here, a physical church here in 2022. Maybe we're going to launch in 2023. Let's say we were having a conversation about it. I said, hey, Carl, let's not use social media. Let's not use a website. We don't need that stuff. Let's just launch. You'd be like, dude, you're crazy. Why would we not use those tools? So think of that little mindset that we just had. It's not going to be too long in the future where you're going to say the same thing about Web3. Maybe it's not here at the moment, but in the future, there's going to be an expectation that you have a Web3 experience of some type, that you have an NFT interaction of some type, blockchain, DAO, whatever. And so now is the time to really get in and start exploring. So VR Church has a little bit of a framework, very simple. It's called Explore, Experiment, Establish. That's how we look at all of our churches. So we'll get into a space and we'll explore it. And that could be an indefinite amount of time. It could be 6 months. It could be a year. We're just exploring. We're having fun. We're checking it out. And then we go from the exploration phase into the experimentation. So what would church look like here? Because we're not trying to force the same church experience into every platform. We have an idea of what it might be, but let's experiment. Let's play around. We've done a ton of experimentation, which has been so good for us. And then the third framework is to establish. At some point, and this sounds weird, but at some point the platform tells us what it wants to be, and then we'll discover what that is and establish a church or a spiritual community. And so at the end of the day, for churches, yes, you got to get into it, because yes, it's going to be an expected part of how people want to interact with you, but start at the exploration level. Get some headsets, visit the metaverse, get a small group going, just explore as long as it takes. And then at some point it'll be like, naturally, all right, let's start experimenting with something. And then, hey, we're going to have a small group. You announce that stuff. So I think that framework helps leaders when I kind of tell them, because I think, like, particularly the church that I came from, great church, by the way, but the vibe was like, let's launch well and big and, all these things and perfect. Right. And so there was very little opportunity to explore and experiment because of the size of our church. Everything needed to be presented in a particular way. So, but that spirit of exploration, innovation, and experimentation has to be a part of this metaverse, because it's such a different beast. I see churches looking at it, scared of it, reluctant. They're going in a little bit clumsy. They're kind of thinking of it as a Web 2, but it's a different beast. It really needs to be thought of differently. If you were to start a metaverse experience, you got to think of it like a church plant, because you're going back to like eyeball interaction at a human level, and you can't just. It's not like a YouTube stream. We could just throw up a YouTube stream anytime. Maybe even not have a host chat, whatever. You can throw up a Facebook, whatever. But the metaverse, you can't just throw that up. There has to be some intentionality behind it. So,
what is something encouraging that you're seeing in the church, Big C Church, as it relates to VR and the metaverse?
It's good to see churches getting into the space now. So, 2022, you've seen a lot. Well, I don't know about a lot, but a lot historically, considering the state of the metaverse, getting into the space. Life Church came in from Craig Rochelle, and Life Church came in, I think, in December. That was like a big influence to get other churches involved. So there was a lot of conversations about that. So it's encouraging to see. It's encouraging to see to some degree that churches are starting to explore. And even before Life Church came in, there's a few churches that were exploring the space and establishing experiences. And so that was cool, because it didn't, they kind of did it out of their own volition and out of their own sense of innovation to get in there. So I think it's going to be an interesting journey. We're working on a kind of like a newsletter to talk about the mistakes we've made to help, because I see the churches making the same mistakes, but to be fair, we did the exact same things.
Right.
And so we're kind of working on resources to help churches, because again, not to be repetitive, but it's not just a YouTube stream you just throw up. There has to be some intentionality behind it.
All right, let me reverse that. What's something that really saddens you in the church right now?
With the metaverse, right?
Metaverse or anything.
So a couple thoughts, again, one of those churches, some of the churches are coming in again, thinking of it as a tack on. And so I visited a couple, and it was just, man, whoa, you guys got to go back to the drawing board. I appreciate the fervor and the initiation to get in this space, but it's just really kind of poorly presented. And I think as a church, we want to, in some ways, be as excellent as possible, not just kind of throwing and tacking it on, because people will sense that immediately coming in. Is there some form of, does that have to be perfect, but is there some form of quality, some form of even someone to say hello to in this space? And so I think maybe it's kind of I know maybe I'm saying too contrarian thing, get in the space. And also I'm saying, okay, for some of you that has jumped in, but take a little bit of a step back and reformat. So that's kind of, it doesn't necessarily sadden me, but it's just all right, this is something to have a conversation about and challenge each other with. The other thing is, what saddens me is in 2020, Barna released that top 20 concerns for pastors, and at the top was like watered down gospel. At the way bottom was keeping up with the latest trends. And so it feels like, and I don't know what Barna has discovered since then, but it feels like it probably hasn't come up a whole lot. Like maybe there was a spike there when COVID was really bad, as far as let's get this interest in technology higher on the chart. But it feels like now that things are quote unquote going back to normal-ish, it's starting to, all right, let's get that back down to the way things were. And I don't think things are going back to the way things were, but again, I could be totally wrong with that. I think people are looking for new ways to interact with your church, and to only dive in more, forget metaverse or VR, like to dive in more to those digital interactions, and then include metaverse and VR. I think it's just a different world now. So, but it saddens me to think that even this week, I had a conversation with someone who says their church doesn't want to do a Facebook group. They're just don't. And so it's like, man, 2022, COVID, all these things, man, that's old school. We gotta move forward.
Well, I think about radio, television. I mean, every technology advance. If you said, I'm not going to use the radio at my disposal to share the gospel with the world. We're in 2022. All right, last one for you. Give me your why. Why are you more passionate than ever about VR and church in the metaverse?
Yeah, and I think it's because of the stories and the people that I've met has just been so unique, so special. And an atheist from Spain who is now a part of our leadership team. The people who are homebound that are part of a spiritual community now. Discovering spiritual gifts that were just really hidden, and discovering those and letting those blossom and nourishing those. And so it really, I guess when you boil that down, it's still, I'm passionate because of the power of the gospel and the power of God and his love that transform people, that evoke the spiritual gifts that they have, and that we would see at a physical level. I'm experiencing that at a metaverse level, and that excites me, and it gets me passionate about it, particularly because I feel like our church tends to connect with the more disenfranchised, maybe the more forgotten, people who would probably be looked at and said, "Oh, that's a ministry project." No, they're not a ministry project; they want to minister. And so discovering that and helping them. And so, I think that's what gets me excited, because I think there's more of that to be had, a lot more of that, because we're just beginning, again, MySpace kind of era of the metaverse. So. Yeah.
Man, this is very interesting. I could talk to you for hours, to just picking your brain on how you've done what you've done, and just what you've messed up on, and what you've learned, and all that over the years. So, man, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Thanks for having me.